What's going on, Godzirra Nation? This is Arghgodzirra. We are back with another round of AFL tips and predictions, looking at round 6 action this week. But before we do that, we've got to look at round 5, which was the final week you could get into the competition if you want to be eligible for prizes. Now, at the point of this recording, there is 61 people in the competition. That is well over 20 more than we had last year. Once again, thank you all so much for the support this year. I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. If you do wish to join now, you can. Just know you'll be doing it for the fun of joining. You will not be eligible for any prizes because the cut-off was round 5. However, speaking of round 5, there were a lot of 6s and 7s, even a couple of 8s. But there was one person that correctly tipped 9 out of 9. And that person has taken first spot on the ladder. Liam H, or Chip16, tipped 9 out of 9 correct tips for round 5, and he's sitting on a total of 35 points. 1 point ahead of Damon B, who has been leading the competition for majority of its running. And as I mentioned, if we scroll through, you will see a lot of 7s, a couple of 8s, a couple of 6s, the 1 5, a couple of 5s actually. But it was a pretty balanced week, minus GWS upsetting Sydney, like I said was a possibility. And the other game that went awry was Fremantle up against Adelaide, which I said was going to be another 50-50 game as well. So, apart from that, all the other teams that were expected to win got over the line. That's why I might be wearing some Richmond stuff this week. I've been keeping a lid on it, but after 86 points, I think it's time I can wear a little bit of merchandise and get excited. But, with that being said, we now move on to round 6. And having a look, the first game of the round is pretty huge in both retrospects. We've got one club who is looking at going 6-0 in the Bulldogs, and we've got another club that started the season 0-3. A lot of question marks were thrown up, and then over the last 2 weeks, they have managed to get over the line, including beating the undefeated Sydney last week. Albeit, I feel they fell over the line because players like Hickey went down with an injury, and they took advantage of that fact. They probably could have won by a hell of a lot more, considering Toby Green kicked 1 goal 7. However, at this point in time, it is incredibly hard to back against the Bulldogs, regardless of where the Bulldogs are going to be playing. Their system that they're running this year is so rock solid. They're running the best midfield in the competition. Their forwards are now starting to hit the board. Defensively, with some of the players they've got out, they should be struggling, but they're still managing to get the job done. GWS could test them this week, but I think Bulldogs are going to be strong enough to go 6-0, and I am backing them to do so by 23 points. I think that's a good margin. Second game of the round is at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong taking on West Coast, and I'm backing Geelong here. And it's a very hard selection because Dangerfield could be out for a number of weeks with an ankle injury, but we're not going to find out about teams until the day before, so not until Friday. So dropping this video on a Tuesday or a Wednesday doesn't help my bearing on knowing which players are going to get up. I feel, however, both clubs have struggled against teams that they should have put away in a big way. West Coast should have absolutely buried the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast were in that game from start to finish. Just this week, Geelong taking on North Melbourne. North Melbourne right up until the final siren were well in the game. So, in retrospect, these two teams have had very similar starts to their year. And although West Coast, I feel, have a very strong side, Geelong should be able to capitalise on no Shannon Hearn, no Luke Shuey, and the likes of those players. However, that being said, they're still getting the job done with those players out, and without a strong ruckman at hand, West Coast could get the jump here. I'm tipping an upset. I'm changing my mind. I'm going West Coast. I think now the more I talk about it, the more I'm talking myself into thinking that, you know, they're going to get up. Because the one thing Geelong failed at against North Melbourne was long bombs into the forward 50 and turning it over. Eagles will eat that up all day. The difference between North Melbourne and West Coast is when West Coast move the ball up forward, they don't just kick it unknowingly forward. They're going to hit a target almost every time. And I think West Coast could expose Geelong's defence by doing so. I talked myself out of tipping Geelong there. I didn't think I'd do it, but I'm backing West Coast for an upset. At Metricon later, or at the same time actually, I was going to say later that afternoon, but at the same time we've got the Gold Coast hosting Sydney. I'm going to back in Sydney to win. They're going to bounce back after a very close, hard-fought battle against GWS. No Tom Hickey, no Lance Franklin. So they're now starting to lose some of the players that have been doing a bit of damage. Take Lance Franklin out of the equation because Sydney have won some games without him this year. I think the most important player for Sydney for the first 5 rounds has been Tom Hickey. He has turned his career around something. Everyone thought when Tom Hickey went, he was just going to be a list clogger because he hasn't really set the world on fire at any of the clubs he's been at. But he has started the year off so strong. I would argue even all-Australian contention, and that's probably a bit big considering Grundy and Gawn have been the ultimate ruckman for the start of the year. But Tom Hickey has done some things that has really put him in that conversation, I personally feel anyway. I think this week they bounce back. Gold Coast will want to do something a little bit better than what they did against the Bulldogs, because that was pretty insipid. But I feel Sydney's systems will get them over the line. At Marvel Stadium, later that afternoon, Carlton are hosting Brisbane. Brisbane are going to come down to Marvel and get a win. Big talk about Carlton this week, especially on AFL 360 and on the couch like Fox Footy. They were talking about how a lot of Carlton supporters, and I know there's actually a lot of Carlton supporters that have subscribed to my channel and follow my AFL content, so feel free to ring in the comments down below because I would like to know your thoughts. But they feel Carlton at the moment have undergone the worst rebuild in history. They feel Stephen Silvani has drafted the wrong kids at times, like Paddy Dow going at pick 3 because he hasn't really gone anywhere. And then they compared Brisbane to Carlton, where Brisbane and Carlton for years were finishing down the bottom of the ladder, bottom of the ladder, bottom of the ladder, and then all of a sudden like that, Brisbane just turned it on and played finals. Carlton should have had that spike by now, but they haven't done it. And I know they've got talent like Charlie Curnow still missing games, and Charlie has the ability, I personally feel, to win a game off his own boot. We've seen him do some impressive things. But there's a lot going on at Carlton, and I think a lot of fans are disgruntled by the fact that they expected a lot more from Carlton this year. Like, in retrospect, they've won 2 games, and they're doing a lot better than some would expect them to, especially when you look at some of the teams like Hawthorn, Collingwood, St Kilda, GWS, all underneath Carlton on the ladder right now. You can only look at what's ahead of them, and it's not looking very bright for Carlton. I hate to say it, but something needs to give. They need to really put in a Herculean effort this week against Brisbane. Otherwise, I feel there's going to be a lot more angry supporters jumping on that bandwagon. At the MCG Saturday night, I feel we have game of the round on our hands, and I'm not saying it just because I'm a Richmond fan. I'm saying it because of the circumstances this game is being played under. And I'm actually surprised Richmond are going in as favourites to this game. Richmond finally got their game style back again against St Kilda, and a lot of people, including Robinson from Fox Footy, Gary Lyon, Nick Rewalt, they've all said that they feel so far the best game that they have seen played by any team this year was how Richmond played against St Kilda last week, both defensively and offensively. And I personally feel the exact same way. Our systems fell into place, and it is the most dominant we have seen Richmond be, both with and without the football. But we're coming up against Melbourne, who is undefeated, 5 out of 5. I said I wasn't a big believer on Melbourne because the first 3 rounds Max Gawn was playing up against rookie ruckman. They beat Geelong, purely because they're a lot faster and Geelong like to slow the game down, but with the new rule changes, it's allowing for a more faster flowing game. Then they struggled a little bit against Hawthorn until the final quarter when they piled on 6 or 7 goals, whatever it was. But Hawthorn were very sloppy and missed their chances. Richmond would not miss those chances. I feel Richmond are polished enough to make best of those chances. I think Gawn will have his toughest competition against Nankervis this week, because I think Nankervis is the most established out of all the ruckmen he has faced so far. It's going to be a game won in the midfield, because you've got Clayton Oliver, Christian Petrarca, Jack Viney, players like that. We know Richmond don't tag. Dimmer's happy to give up clearances because our defensive structure is so strong. But if Melbourne get on top of Richmond in a big way with the clearances and contested ball in the middle, that's where they will win the game. I am still backing in my boys, and I will do so every week. There has been times in the past I've backed against them, so I wouldn't go as far as saying I'm always going to tip Richmond, but I firmly believe our systems are enough, especially on the back of last week, to move forward this week and capitalise. The biggest question mark over Richmond's head is, can they emulate what we did last week moving into this week? Or is it going to be a drop-off again? If we have even half of the intensity we had last week, I think it still holds us in good stead. Saturday night rounds out at Optus Stadium with Fremantle taking on North Melbourne. I feel it's pretty self-explanatory. Fremantle are going to win. The biggest thing coming out of Fremantle right now is a couple of people have mentioned that David Mundy might actually be a sneaky chance for the Brownlow. I have heard David Mundy's name and the Brownlow mentioned in conversation many times over the last couple of weeks. He's just turned games on its head this year. He's 35 years old. You look at a player like Sean Burgoyne, who has been one of the best players throughout his career, and he's starting to slow down. You can see that they're playing him more up forward, or they'll drop him into a role that doesn't have the high impact that he used to be able to play. Mundy's still running around in that midfield, accumulating a lot of the ball, hitting targets, and he's well composed. The last 10 minutes against Adelaide last week, the round gone, turned the game on its head. To think that at 35 he could be winning his first Brownlow, he'd have to be up there in the votes. I reckon he would be, undoubtedly. Fremantle quite comfortably get it done for me. Sunday has 3 games. The first of which is in Tasmania with Hawthorn hosting Adelaide. And even though the odds are with Hawthorn, I feel this is a very hard game to tip again because Adelaide could get up here. However, I am going to back Hawthorn. This is, I feel, a 50-50 game. I feel Adelaide could get up here. Hawthorn, I feel, have been chomping at the bit looking for a win, but they've just been falling short. If they clean up the inaccuracies they had against Melbourne moving into this game, they will get a 4, 5, 6 goal win quite comfortably. Adelaide, however, could rock up and just absolutely destroy them. There's been times in the past where I've tipped Hawthorn over Adelaide. Adelaide's come out and just gone whack. So it's hard. But I think Hawthorn will get it done. I've got to be confident in my tips. Let's lock it in. Sunday, Anzac Day football. This game has a lot of question marks over its head. A lot of chat about the jumper clashes, which I think is absolutely terrible. They need to fix something about that. I don't think they will, but they need to. And I think it's more than just Essendon wearing white shorts. Needs to be something bigger than that. Collingwood are already missing players like Taylor Adams, who has left a big gaping hole in that midfield. They'll be going into this game with no Jeremy Howe in defence, no Jordan De Goey up forward or in the middle, whichever way they want to swing him that week. They tried testing Darcy Moore as a full forward against West Coast, but West Coast exposed them, so whether they try to use Darcy Moore again and then Essendon's forward start getting off the chain. But Essendon are missing who I feel is one of their most important players, if not their most important, and that's Jordan Ridley. I feel like I broke him because I traded him into Supercoach this week and then he goes and gets out concussed, so any Jordan Ridley owners, I apologise. But his intercept game has set up Essendon's back to forward attack so much this year. And I think with him out, I don't know who now steps up as that number one defender to lock somebody down. So Collingwood could bring in a Mason Cox this week and he could get off the chain, which is funny because you don't normally say that against someone like Mason Cox because he doesn't get off the chain that often. But we've seen him break at least 2 games apart, one against my boys in that prelim, which we won't talk about ever again. But I feel this is a 50-50 game. Even though Collingwood are better set, I feel Essendon could come out and do some damage. When you look at the outs for both teams, you'd think Essendon are more well placed. The only thing that I feel Collingwood has going for it here is Brodie Grundy in the ruck against a team that doesn't have an established ruckman. I'm going to tip Collingwood, but I really feel Essendon are going to challenge here. Collingwood need to win this game. If they don't win this game, they're starting their season 1-6, and you could always put a line through them to not play finals this year. That's how early I'm going. But I think they'll do it this week. In a very close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any margin. And round 6 rounds out with Port Adelaide taking on St Kilda. At Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide are going to absolutely massacre them. If St Kilda come out and play the way they did against Richmond, like against Port Adelaide are going to put them to the sword in a big way. I've got to do my gauntlet tip. So my gauntlet tip this week as a certainty. Ooh, are there any actually lock-in certainties? The only one I could really do would have to be Fremantle over North Melbourne. Or Port over St Kilda. That's probably the one I'll go with for my gauntlet this week. Upset of the round would be I don't think North defeating Fremantle would be an upset because North have been thereabouts in some games. St Kilda defeating Port in Port would be absolutely huge. GWS defeating the Bulldogs would probably be my upset of the round, only because it puts a stint in their 6-0 run. I only say that would be upset of the round over Melbourne, like Richmond beating Melbourne or whatever, because where they're placed. Bulldogs should comfortably win this game, but if GWS come out of nowhere and go whack, I think that would be a big loss. Personally, just my thing. Now, also, before we wrap up this video, did I click save my tips? Want to make sure my tips are saved. I'm looking at doing something new at the end of this round. We did a podcast at the start of the year, like a video podcast of my predictions for the 2021 season with my brother and 2 of my mates. We're looking at doing a quarterly podcast where, after a certain amount of games, we sit down, we reflect over the rounds that have already gone down, we discuss some things, we talk about our own teams, look at how our predictions are going. I'm keen to know if that is something you guys want to see. I'm looking at calling it quarter by quarter, 23, 24 rounds. If we do it every 6 rounds, 4 videos a year. If it goes well enough, I'm happy to do it even more frequently than 4 videos throughout the season. But I'm keen to see if that is something you would like to watch, because the tipping videos go so well with you guys. I'm just curious to see whether you'd be interested in getting some AFL insight and actually being able to talk, and maybe even asking some questions on social media that we can answer for you and getting you guys involved in the video. So let me know in the comments down below if that is something you would like to see. I'm looking at getting that video out next week after the round is finished. Fingers crossed. But that's it for another round of tipping. hopefully I can keep moving up that ladder. Congratulations again to our 9 out of 9 tipper sitting on the top, Liam H. Very well done to get 9 out of 9, especially with GWS upsetting Sydney and Fremantle getting up over Adelaide. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.
Continue.